Welcome to SecuRam's presentation on one-time code locks. This is the next generation in ATM security. So first of all, who is SecuRam Systems? SecuRam is a California-based company with deep roots in access control. We actually entered the electronic safe market back in 2006 at the request of several very large North American safe manufacturers. Why did we enter? From a technology perspective, SafeLock products as they exist today are very stagnant. SafeLock products have not seen the type of product innovation and feature inclusion that's found in access control or other areas of security. And the SafeLock market is dominated by two well-entrenched large companies. SafeLock products leave many of the needs of its users unmet. And customers are demanding more, yet the product manufacturers are not responding. So, SecuRam has expertise in a number of different areas that benefit them as they launch products into the SafeLock industry and specifically into the ATM industry. We're experts in physical security systems, specifically access control, secure authentication protocols, specifically biometrics, and wireless communication, as well as electronic and software engineering. We entered the SafeLock market with three guiding principles. 1. Listen to customer requirements. 2. Develop innovative solutions to meet those needs. And 3. Produce reliable systems. Our SafeLocks go on very fortified boxes. So if they're not reliable, there's no point putting them on. Since 2006, SecuRam has become the fastest growing, most innovative, and most successful SafeLock manufacturer worldwide. We've introduced over 157 new products to this market. And SecuRam OTC, standing for one-time code, is our solution for the ATM safe market. We've installed over 150,000 ATM locks in the past 2 years. It's fast becoming the most dominant SafeLock program for ATM use in the last 24 months. So let's take a look at securing the ATM. We're going to review the current technologies that are available. So why are one-time code locks used on ATMs? And essentially, the reason for this is, if you're in the ATM business, you know this, but essentially ATMs are remote cash vaults, and as such, they're prime targets for theft. But theft comes from both external elements and internal elements. Inside an ATM, there's an ATM safe that is designed to guard against external attacks. The ATM lock is designed to guard against both external and internal attacks. The reason that we're guarding against two types of attacks is cash carriers or service personnel are hired to do either cash replenishment or maintenance on the ATMs, and they have to access the safe. In accessing the safe, of course, they have access to large amounts of cash at these remote cash vault locations, and we want to ensure that we guard against internal theft because many people have access to these large amounts of cash inside the ATM safe. So how does this get done? Generally, using high security authentication protocols, a code, enter a code into your lock, combine that with a PIN code to verify who you are, and then generally some form of electronic key. With some of the systems that are in the market now, they use what's called a Dallas key. It has an electronic signature or number on the key. Plus, with using these high security authentication protocols, we also combine that in the market with what we call dynamic code management or one-time codes. And this provides controlled and singular access to the safe. Once the code is used, it can't be used again at a later date to gain access to the safe. So as we began our development of a product to meet the needs of the current ATM safe market, we polled a number of financial institutions and security professionals, and we found there's a real need and desire for advanced ATM security solutions. What they were looking for was improved management efficiency. The systems that are out there now are very management heavy. They're very they take a lot of employee time in order to manage these things. They wanted improved remote management. The systems, again, that are out there currently are isolated systems. They have no communication method back to the head office or the dispatch software other than by human interaction, either their phone calls or actually bringing information back, whether that's audit trail information or closed seals or something of the sort. Ideally, improve the authentication methods. The technology that's being used in the market today is over 20 years old. So there's an opportunity to improve how people are accessing the safes, as well as verifying who they are with different types of more current technologies. Then the real-time data transfer and lock status. Again, because we have no remote capability with the current systems that are in the marketplace, there is no way to be able to provide information back in real time. And finally, one of the components was, let's reduce lifecycle cost. The systems that are in the market today are very expensive to maintain, not only from an employee management perspective, but also from an operational perspective due to issues related to enrolling vendors and deleting vendors as access changes, or access rights change in the product. Essentially what they said is the ATM is an advanced technological solution. The lock should have advanced capabilities also, and currently they don't. So let's take a look at ATM technology. It continues to develop at a very high rate of speed. Of course, we have online communications now. We have check scanners, image scanners, cash replenishment modeling, anti-skimming devices to protect against stolen identities, and so on. But the technologies that are in the field today to secure the ATM are two. One is called the CABA-MOS Cencon, and the other is called the SNG 6128, or sometimes referred to as A-Series. These technologies are 20 years old, and there haven't been any improvements to these products in a number of years, mainly because there's not any interest by those two major players to do any innovative solutions. So, as we looked at developing this product, what we decided was we would set up a challenge for ourselves, and that was to develop an ATM safe lock management system that is reliable, first and foremost, is fast and efficient, provides real-time management and reporting, offers the use of one-time codes. Again, this is a very good technology because it ensures that you have controlled and singular access to the ATM safe. However, we wanted to do all this without residing on the financial institutions network. This is so key because banks, credit unions, other financial institutions do not want lock management functions residing on their network. They use their network for other business activities, and they don't want it being confused with lock management. We want to provide flexible and cost-effective system management, make it easy for people to use our system, and then expand the use of high-security authentication protocols to improve the security around the ATM. We also thought these things were important. As we heard from more and more banks, we realized that there was a requirement now to manage more than one lock on the ATM. So instead of just managing the ATM safe with a high-security safe lock, we have the opportunity to perhaps add this same type of high security in other areas of the ATM, specifically top hat security. And we'll talk a little bit more about that a little later. But essentially, it's the idea that you can protect the data inside the ATM, because that's the part that's being stolen. As much as the cash is being stolen, the identities of those people using the ATM are also being stolen. We want to eliminate the need for these things called Dallas keys. They're very costly, they burn out, you're always replacing them, and there are a number of operational concerns around the management of those keys. We wanted to improve the shared liability process. Now, what this process means is if you hire a maintenance company and a cash carrier to manage your ATM, you have to provide them access to be able to gain access to your ATM. That means they have a piece of software that they can generate their own codes and then go out and open those locks so that they're managing it at an arm's length distance from the bank or the ATM owner. The process that is currently used by two different companies, the first one is CABA-MOS, uses something called a vendor meet. Significant cost implication with this system. The idea is that everyone that's enrolled in the lock at the ATM must enroll themselves at the lock. And then if you change vendors, so perhaps you change your cash carrier from cash carrier 1 to cash carrier 2, you have to have every person who's enrolled in that lock go back out to that lock, remove themselves in a process called shelving, and then re-enroll themselves manually at the locks. So the new parties would re-enroll themselves. Very, very, very costly. Again, it's archaic technology, but that is the process that's being used today. And who ends up paying is the bank. We also wanted to eliminate the reliance on uncooperative third parties. Now, this is in particular related to the Sargent and Greenleaf A-Series lock. Essentially, they improved this idea of a vendor meet, but the way to improve it was to ask the uncooperative third party, the guy that just got fired, to import a file into his software in order to remove himself from the access to your machines. Sometimes a bit difficult when you've just fired them. Anyway, there's an opportunity to improve this shared liability process. And then provide automated transmission of close seals. Close seals are the verification that the code has been used and that the safe is locked. And close seals are very, very important when it comes to ATMs because you want to know that the asset is now secure and the code has been consumed, expired. But the way closed seals are done today, one of the systems provides closed seals, but the other doesn't. The Kabamos system provides a closed seal, but it's manual. So you write it down on the back of your hand or on a piece of paper or a scrap of paper, and then when you get back to the dispatch center, you give them the 20 closed seals from the day and hope they match up with the records that they have. There's an opportunity here to provide automated transmission of these closed seals, whereby the closed seals are transmitted in real time. And then provide real-time central audit. How it works now is you have to go to each lock to get the audit, the record of who's gotten into the safe lock and when. And that's a significant cost. You have to actually go to each ATM, download the information onto a device, the stylus key, and bring it back to the head office in order to upload it. We thought there might be an opportunity to eliminate that cost and provide real-time control. Reduce dispatch center management costs. Again, these current systems that are in the market, the Kabamos Cencon, the SNGA series, are very expensive to manage and run. In fact, in some locations, you have groups called Cencon Lock Management because there's an entire department devoted to the management of these locks. Let's see if we can reduce that. And then provide a duress feature to improve safety employees. If you are opening an ATM and you have an issue, someone holds you up, hopefully you have a way to communicate information back to the dispatch. Because the current systems that are used are isolated, there is no way to provide duress signaling back to the head office to say, I need help. And then within our system, we wanted to be able to provide it as a scalable, convertible, managed lock system that grows as you grow so that you don't have a huge expense in order to provide high security from the very start. ATM manufacturer-specific requests were unique. As we talked to them, they said, look, we'd really like to have what's called an on-demand system. And basically what that means is for special employees who have to go out and do emergency service perhaps, and they've signed an agreement where they're held liable for any loss, we would like to be able to give them on-demand access, meaning I don't have to schedule an event for them. So is that possible? And within this on-demand system, allow for multiple openings. It kind of goes against the grain of the one-time code, but for specific users, special personnel, they sometimes require this rather than having to do some laborious scheduling. But this would only be for specific ATM personnel. And then integrate Bluetooth-enabled smartphones. Many companies now are carrying smartphones, as most of us do, and we wanted to be able to, or they wanted to be able to, integrate some of this technology through our smartphones so that we could provide easier access to these locks. So the solution, as we've developed this, is what we call SecuRam OTC. We have two different models within this. First of all, it's the ProLogic model that you see on the top right. And the ProLogic model is the electronic version. On the bottom right, you see what's called the ScanLogic model, ScanLogic OTC, and it uses a fingerprint sensor in order to authenticate with the system. So we've now developed the system. We have 150,000 of these in the field as of October of 2014. Let me show you how it works. I'm going to show you a real-time, one-time code system that provides instant communication. It's an automated system, so there's no need for large groups of people to manage this. I'm going to show you 3 different modes. One is called cash carrier mode. The next one is called on-demand mode. And the third is called bank mode. Let me show you how it works. First, let's take a look at cash carrier mode. So, how the system is set up is at head office, we have a computer system. This can be in a server environment, it can be a standalone PC, it doesn't really matter. As long as it is connected to the internet and is able to receive information and send information, then it should be fine. We generally recommend Windows 7, but most Windows platforms from XP up will work. Now, in the field, we have our ATM lock installed on the ATM, and this could be any ATM. I'm showing here the ProLogic OTC, but this could also be the fingerprint safe lock, the ScanLogic OTC. And then in the field, we have our cash carrier. And this cash carrier carries with him a smartphone. He uses his phone in his regular daily business for telephone calls and emails and so on, text messages, but we provide an app that is loaded onto this phone, and it works specifically with our ATM locks. So how does this work? First, what happens is Dispatch Center establishes and communicates a schedule. We say in the software that this person, this cash carrier, is allowed to open this ATM at this date. Now, it could be this date to the next date, so you could set this for any length of time, any time parameter. So it could be from this Monday to the following Monday, or it could be this Monday from 2:05 p.m. until 2:10 p.m. It could be any length of time. The parameters are yours to set. So once we establish the schedule in the system, then we communicate that information to the software or to the application that is loaded on the phone of the that's registered to this particular user. In the software, we register the IMEI number of the telephone plus the telephone number of this telephone and who it belongs to, so that we can call out this device at any time and communicate to it. Now, what I said before is the existing systems are isolated. What we are doing is providing a communication system at the ATM that uses the communication that we bring to it each time we come to the ATM safe, our phone. So, again, the system sends the information to the app. What happens was that once the technician gets to the ATM is he will begin the process. He will enter this PIN code that has been sent to him. Now, this again is a second layer of security. The PIN code is actually a one-time use PIN code as well. It doesn't open the lock, but it just verifies that I'm here. It gives me a number on the screen, and it sends that information back to the app using Bluetooth technology. And you see the number that is on the screen matches the number that's back on this app. It communicated that information by Bluetooth, so the technician didn't have to do anything. So what that's done so far is verified that this person is at this ATM, and now the system's going to check to see whether or not this person is allowed to gain access. Sends that verification code back to the dispatch center. At the dispatch center, that code is received. The dispatch center then checks its records to determine that this person is allowed, based on the current schedule, to gain access to this ATM. And then in an automated fashion, unmanned, it sends the information back to the phone. The one-time use code is presented to the phone. It's sent at that period of time. The technician then receives a message on the screen of the ATM lock that says, I've received the OTC code, press back is essentially what they do, and they press this button, and then this OTC is transferred automatically to the lock, and then the lock opens. So you can see what we've done here. We've taken an isolated system, this ATM lock at this ATM safe. We can't reside on the financial institution's network, so we bring a network to it using our smartphone, and then we make it really easy by communicating by Bluetooth and by 3G back to the dispatch center. All of this takes about 2 to 3 seconds. It's actually quite amazing how quickly it happens. But the dispatch center can be anywhere in the world. And the ATM can be anywhere in the world as well. Provided you go to the ATM and have your communication, you receive a one-time code very, very quickly. Probably faster than it is to enter in a one-time use code with any of the other systems. So what happens then when you close the safe? Obviously, since this is all real-time, the system back at head office knows the information has been sent to this particular carrier at such a time. So what happens now is the technician completes his task and closes the ATM safe. As he does that, a close seal is displayed on the LCD screen of the ATM lock. Now, instead of having to write this down or call it back in, this close seal is automatically transmitted by Bluetooth to the app. You can see the close seal here, and it matches the close seal on the screen. The app then receives this information and automatically sends it back to the dispatch center. The dispatch center software receives the information, the transaction's been completed, an audit is updated, and the lock status is updated. In fact, if you look in the software, you'll see that the lock was unlocked 30 seconds ago, and now it's locked again. We know that it is locked and verified. Now, one other important thing about close seals. Our close seals that appear here are not just indicating that the lock has been closed. We can tie in 3 things. The lock is closed, the bolt of the lock itself is closed, the door of the safe is closed, and the handle on the safe has been closed. So when those 3 things happen, the close seal appears. That is unlike the Kabamos Cencon. You can actually get a close seal without closing the door. You just spin the combination off and you get a close seal. Again, it's kind of archaic technology, but we've tried to make improvements here. So let's take a look at an actual product demonstration showing you how this process works.
Today we're taking a look at the ProLogic OTC SecuRam's ATM Safe Lock. We're going to show you in this video the process to open the lock using a one-time use code. We do that by using a smartphone that communicates to the lock by Bluetooth and then communicates back to the dispatch software to verify that in fact I can open this lock today using a one-time use code. In the software back at dispatch, I've already scheduled this event so that I can open this lock using the PIN code that has been transferred to me. As I enter the PIN code in the lock, it'll begin the verification process, and you'll see a 17-digit number appear on the screen. It will then communicate back to the app. The app will send the information back to the dispatch software, and the software will verify that in fact I am able to open the safe today, and it'll send me back a one-time use code, which will be transferred by Bluetooth to the lock, and then the lock will open. Let me show you how this works. First of all, here's the app that's installed on my phone. It has a communication method, Bluetooth to the safe lock, and then 3G back to the dispatch software. So the first thing I want to do when I arrive is I want to click on the select button, and I'm going to select the bank that I'm at. So in this case, I've got a couple of banks. I'll just choose the first one, and I'll say submit. Now I see a number of locks that are in my range. The Bluetooth safe locks send off a broadcast signal, and I'm picking them up on my app here. So the one that I want to connect to, or I want to open, is the first one, the ProLogic Bluetooth, and I press connect. It now will connect with that lock, and it'll be ready for me to enter my PIN code. I enter my PIN code, and you'll see what happens on the app here. It's received the OTC code from dispatch already. It's now going to send it to the lock, and the lock is ready for me to open it by pressing the back button, and the lock opens. Now, when the lock closes, you'll see a close seal appears. That close seal is sent by Bluetooth automatically to the app. It's already sent it back to the dispatch center, and it's verified it is the correct close seal, and the ATM safe is now secure. That's how you use the ProLogic OTC. It's a very simple process, but very highly secure.
All right, the first question that you're going to have, I'm sure, is, oh, that's all great, but what if there's no network available? No problem. We build in network redundancy so that if there is no network, let's assume this ATM is in the basement of a building, 5 stories underground, it's just not going to get a signal. You can you can set up your system for each ATM, for each user, in a way that you can have redundancy around this. So we can set it up in 3 different ways. Real time, which means that I'm always going to rely on network connectivity. I'm going to get these codes in real time and nothing else. I can get them in what most people do, real time first. So always look for the network first. If I don't see a network, then send me what we call a pre-issued code. I'll explain that in a second. And then the other option is to set it up so that it always does pre-issued codes, never has to look for a signal. Now, how this works is we like to do real time because it gives you the most control and management over your system. But as we schedule the event, schedule the lock opening, we can provide a pre-issued OTC, which means that the OTC has already been generated. It's sent to the application on the phone. The application on the phone is hiding that pre-issued OTC in the background of the phone. It's not visible to anyone. It's in the code of the app. If, when he arrives at the ATM, he puts his PIN code in and he receives the verification code by Bluetooth from the SafeLock, and then the app tries to connect back to head office to say, can this person get in right now? And let's say it can't get in. It's 5 stories underground. What happens is the app recognizes it can't deliver a real-time code because it can't get connection, and it delivers a pre-issued code. That OTC that was already hiding in the ones and zeros of the application is now brought to the forefront, and they can enter that code, or it's actually transferred automatically, and they get in. No difference to the technician. Redundancy is just built in as a standard course. So what are the benefits of this type of system for the cash carrier? First of all, OTC is generated in real time, so there is no concern of unused or lost or previously issued codes that are out there somewhere and you have no idea. In the industry, we call these live codes or live keys, and with both the competitive products, this can happen. So in our system, nothing is live until such time as you're standing in front and verifying. Since OTCs are real time, the system administrator can deactivate a user at any time, even if an opening has been scheduled for this particular user. But 5 minutes before he arrives at the ATM, this employee is no longer employed. He gets fired over the phone. That's a nasty thing to happen, but if he gets fired over the phone, then you can just go into the system and you can deactivate him. And even if he goes to that ATM after having been fired, enters his PIN code, which has been issued to him, it'll check back with the server and it won't give him a code. All audit trail events and lock status reports are updated in the software in real time. So because it's all real time, you have the information at your fingertips at all times. No more do you have to go to the lock in order to extract the audit trail. Once events are scheduled, all verification activity in the software is automated. No one has to do anything. You don't have to man an IVR system. You don't have to put in an expensive voice recognition system. You just allow the system to take place. Everything is managed within the system in an unmanned way. No one has to sit there at the ATM the ATM software and provide code information. This reduces your manpower costs at your management center. These locks are able to be operated in 2 modes. In some areas of the world, they prefer to use what's called dual mode, where 2 people are required to enter a code, a verification code, in order to get a one-time use code to open the lock. We build this into both of our systems, so if you want that, you can certainly have it by a click of a mouse in the software. We also do it in single mode, which is more common in the North American environment and perhaps in South America as well, where one person is entrusted to go and open the safe, and we do it with 1 code verification. We build in duress so that if there's an emergency, you can report that alert back through your alarm panel. And we have the option to provide fingerprint authentication. And I believe we're the only fingerprint OTC lock in the world. But essentially this takes the guesswork out of did I have the right PIN code? Did I, what's called fat finger a code? Did I enter it too quickly and somehow I messed up with the code and it's giving me a BRAP, which is an error message in one of these less sophisticated systems that are on the market now. So with fingerprint authentication, you don't have to remember any codes. All you have to do is put your finger on it. It will then provide that information back to the dispatch center and say, this fingerprint belongs to this person. Does this person have access in the schedule to be able to open the lock today? If so, send him a one-time use code. All right, so that is the cache carrier mode. What I'd now like to do is show you what we've called on-demand mode. And on-demand mode is unique. Again, the system is set up exactly the same. So again, we have our software back at our dispatch center. We have our technician in the field this time. He has an application that we've provided on his smartphone. And at the safe, we have the safe lock installed. Now what happens is we specify that this person is special. We give him high level or authority. And as a result, we don't have to schedule every single event for him to go and open this safe. This is sometimes useful with high-level maintenance technicians. So what happens in this case is instead of scheduling an event every single time this person wants to gain access, I can provide him what's called a long-term OTC access. I create him as an on-demand user. He can open the safe when he wants to. He has special access rights. What happens is this code is sent to the technician's phone. The PIN code is there. The PIN code can be valid for any length of time. So for instance, if you would like to say, I'm going to issue in a PIN code for on-demand mode, and the PIN code is going to be good for 10 days, you can do that. If you want it good for 90 days, you can do that. If you want it good for one opening, you can do that. If you want it good for 10 openings per day, the system allows you to do that also. So the software sends the long-term access PIN to the app. When the technician arrives, he enters his PIN code. Now, I've said here a masked PIN code. And what that means is the PIN code that shows up on the phone isn't the PIN code that he's going to enter here. And this can be true in cache carrier mode as well. Let's say I got a PIN code here of 123456. But I know that my protocol is, and the security level I've set for myself, is every 1 is a 7. So really the number is not 123456 that I'm going to enter. It is 723456. So what that guards against is in case someone loses their phone or someone is looking over their shoulder or whatever it happens to be and decides they're going to outsmart the system, we can build in proprietary information specific to that user, and we call it a masked PIN code. So he enters the masked PIN code. The lock creates this random code or a verification code that says, I'm at this location. It then sends it by Bluetooth back to the app. So the number arrives back at this location. It sends the information back to the dispatch center just like we did previously. Even though this is an on-demand user, it still checks the schedule back at head office to see whether or not this person is allowed to get in today. If he is allowed to get in, the system will verify that in the schedule, send it back to him with an OTC directly to his smartphone. A message appears on the screen. It says press back. The back button is right down here. Press back and the OTC is transferred and the lock opens. So in this case, it's really a convenience mode, but it allows special technicians to gain access when they need to, even in a one-time code environment. Of course, at any time, because my system is live, I can deactivate this person and not allow him access at any point in time. Again, elapsed time, I say it's less than 10 seconds, but really it's less than 2 or 3 seconds. It's very, very fast. Now, what happens when he closes the safe? Same thing happens here. As he closes the safe, a closed seal is displayed. Again, this can be tied into the lock bolt. It can be tied into the safe door. It can be tied into the boltwork of the safe handle. All three things then display a closed seal. And that's optional. If you would prefer to, you can just have it when the lock bolt is closed. But we feel the most secure way is to tie all three of those things together. Because I could close the door and I could turn the handle to extend the bolt, but not close the door. And then the cache is wide open to the public. And this has happened in situations that have been investigated where the technician or the cache carrier didn't close the door, got his close seal, verified it was closed, but the money was missing. So all three things happen. The closed seal appears. This closed seal automatically gets transferred by Bluetooth back to the app. When the app receives it, it automatically sends it back to the dispatch center, and your transaction has been completed. The audit and the lock status has been updated in the system, and I know every single moment of every day that my assets in the field are secure. All right, so now let's take a look at the benefits for on-demand mode. In this mode, technicians, special technicians, have on-demand access to the safes using OTCs. It's not a static code. Some of the locks that are in the marketplace right now have static codes. The problem with that is you never know when they're being used. So in the on-demand mode, it gives you the convenience of being able to go there, but it always does it in a one-time code environment. You always know exactly what's happening at that ATM. And you can always disable that person's ability to gain access. Since OTCs are real-time, the system administrator can deactivate a user at any time, even an on-demand user. Again, since OTCs are real-time, the system administrator can deactivate the user's access to the lock at any time. All audit trail events and lock status reports are updated in the software in real time, just as we saw before. Once on-demand users are established, all verification activity in the software is automated. No one has to do anything. You could send him a code. That code maybe is good for 90 days. And at any time throughout those 90 days, he can go to the lock. The system will say, yes, I checked the schedule and this person's able to access the ATM, and sends them automatically an OTC. Now, if you suspect that this employee is getting into the ATM in an incorrect manner or at unscheduled times, you can always cancel the issuance of the OTC, and you can change its status from an on-demand user back to a scheduled user, completely at your discretion. Very, very flexible system. Because it's all automated, it reduces management manpower costs. There's no concern over what's called an IVR, an integrated voice response system, bottleneck. Some companies use very expensive IVR systems, and this tends to be the problem. People are on hold waiting for the IVR system to generate codes for them. And again, it's the idea of using old technology, and it's really becoming a bottleneck for large service providers or cash carriers who use IVR systems. We can provide single mode access or dual mode access depending on your security requirements. And we have a address feature built in to report alerts. Always we have the option to do this with fingerprint authentication. Now, with fingerprint authentication, two things happen. I can enroll the fingerprints for all the potential users back at head office, or I can enroll them at the safe lock. It doesn't matter either place, because our live system, we're always checking back and forth between the two systems to verify identity. All right, so that is cash carrier mode and on-demand mode. Now, bank mode. This is where bank employees have access to their own ATMs on site. And in bank mode, traditionally, what happens with the Kabamos Cencon and with the S&G A series, they provide static codes. Really reduces the security level of the lock, because you never know when the static codes are being used. With the Kabamos system, they use a key, Dallas key, and a code, which is better. But with the S&G A series, it's just a code. Either way, whether it's Kabamos or S&G, you can always, as a bank employee, gain access to the ATM whenever you want and nobody knows about it. That becomes a bit of a problem. So let me show you how we dealt with bank mode. We essentially replicated the on-demand system. And we said, let's just give bank employees, they're special employees obviously, the bank trusts them to manage the cash, so we'll give them on-demand access. In this case, we set up each bank employee on the system as an on-demand user, and we provide them a long-term access, renewable at any period that you want to renew it. The PIN code is sent to the application. The user has that, and again, it could be for 10 days or 90 days or 1 day or 1 hour. You determine that in the system. The bank employee enters his PIN code in the lock, and the system takes over. verifies that this person is in fact able to gain access to this safe lock, sends it back to the dispatch center. The dispatch center then verifies that this person is a special user, an on-demand user, and he is able to get into the safe at this point in time. The OTC is sent to the smartphone. The smartphone automatically sends it to the lock, and the user is instructed to press the back button on the entry pad using the LCD screen. We actually use the LCD screen to report the progress as well as to instruct the user what to do. So there's really no training involved with this system. It tells them what to do each step of the way. So they press the back button and the lock opens. Again, less than 10 seconds, more like 2 or 3. What happens when you close the safe in bank mode? So in bank mode with the S&G A-Series product, there is no verification of a close. They don't use a key. They just use a code. There's no verification. With the Cencon mode, you use a key and a code, and there potentially could be a close seal, I suppose, but no one ever uses a close seal in bank mode. So there's really unfettered access to the ATM lock by the bank employee. Nobody has any record of it until such time as a loss occurs, and then they go to each lock and they extract the audit trail manually, the old-fashioned way, and look at the information and try to decipher it. So what happens here is the bank employee closes the ATM safe. The closed seal is displayed on the screen. The closed seal is sent automatically to the app. The app automatically sends it back to the dispatch center. And the transaction is closed. The audit and lock status are updated, and the safe is locked and verified. All right, so what are the benefits here? Bank employees have on-demand access, unscheduled access to the ATM, but it still uses OTCs. Since we issue the OTC in real time, just like we do in the regular system, the system administrator can deactivate a user at any time, even an on-demand user. All audit trail events and lock status reports are updated in the software in real time. There's no requirement to go to the lock to retrieve the audit. We know what's happening all the time. There is no static code, so the bank employee doesn't have unfettered access to the ATM lock. Once on-demand users are established, all verification in the software is automated. Don't have to do anything. It takes over automatically. There's no concern over the requirement to manage keys. With one particular system, the Kavamos Cencon, you have this huge issue of managing keys. With our system, you don't. We don't use keys. Keys are old technology and less secure. There's no requirement to change codes at the lock when the bank employees change. Again, in static code systems, if a bank employee changes, you send a technician out, which costs money. That money gets billed to likely the bank, and you end up having to change these codes all the time. With our system, you just issue an on-demand access to the new employee. You cancel the old person, and you issue a new person. All happens with the click of a mouse. Our systems operate in both single mode and dual mode, and we can build in a duress feature for alarm reporting. Of course, we always have the option to provide fingerprint authentication using our ScanLogic OTC. Okay, let's take a look at shared access. We've shown you the process for each of the profiles within the system. The cash carrier mode, the on-demand mode, and bank mode. Now we'll take a look at shared access. And shared access is very, very important because if the bank owns an ATM and he has one cash carrier coming to do cash replenishment, a maintenance company to do maintenance, and perhaps the bank employee has access to the ATM in order to fix issues or add cash throughout the day when the cash carrier is not there. So all these people have to have access. They have to have what's called a shared liability agreement. And essentially what happens is these 3 people or 4 people or 5 people enter into an agreement that says we're all jointly responsible for any losses that take place from this ATM. And they do that because there's really no other way to determine it. They all have access. They can all create their own access. So they enter into a legal binding agreement. We thought there was a better way to handle shared access. First of all, in the Kavamos system, the Cencon, there's, I think, a limit of 3 parties who can be involved in the shared access. It's route mode, bank mode, and service mode. So those 3 people can have shared access into the system. Our system's unlimited. We don't care how you manage your business. We just provide a secure method to be able to allow people in and out of your ATM safe, and you manage it as flexibly as you would like. The system owner can activate and deactivate its shared access partners instantly in the software just by clicking the mouse. It can do it lock by lock or in totality. So for instance, if you had a Kabamos Cencon system, for instance, and you had 100,000 ATMs in the field, and you eliminated the cash carrier at all of those locations, and you hired a new cash carrier. The old cash carrier, the old maintenance provider, the old bank employee now have to go to every single one of those 100,000 ATMs, remove themselves through a process called shelving, and then the new cash carrier, the maintenance provider, and the bank employee also have to go, and they have to install themselves in the lock. A very archaic system, but that's how the current systems work. Our system doesn't do that. You just activate it in the system. Because it's live, you can do it at any time with the click of a mouse. A shared access partner can manage an unlimited number of ATM portfolios. So for instance, if I am the cash carrier, I can have the ATM portfolios of any number of banks, all managed within my software system. It's not restrictive at all. Shared access partners use a highly secure web portal to schedule lock access. So what we do is instead of you having a standalone piece of software that's completely disconnected from all other pieces of software that manage your ATM, we provide a server-based system, and we provide a web page for each access partner. When the access partner wants to schedule his own employees' openings of this particular safe, or your group of safes, or globally all safes that he manages, he can simply go out to the web portal that we provide and give him his own login. He logs into the portal and schedules the event. We have dual authentication if you require it on the web portal, where two people are required to actually do the scheduling and any operation in the ATM software. But that's completely up to you. Very flexible, and all of the data is encrypted. The administrative rights can be determined for each user in the system. So for instance, if you are managing a portfolio of locks for 5 different banks and you're the cash carrier, you can set up an employee in your office who's going to be generating schedules for region number 1 and only region number 1. That's all they'll be able to do. They won't be able to look at audit trails. They won't be able to look at closed seals. They won't be able to add personnel. They won't be able to delete ATMs. The only job is they can do this piece. So all administrative rights can be determined by task for each user in the system. Very flexible system. All right. Why is the elimination of these second-party access issues important? I'll tell you 2 different options here, depending on what system you're currently using. With this particular system, it's called the SNGA series. Their vendor management is vulnerable because the lock owner must rely on the cooperation of the secondary party to deactivate themselves in the system. You've just fired this person. You send them an emailed file and you say, please enter this in your software, your standalone software, to deactivate yourself because I have no control over you. And that's a problem. So there's 2 ways to do it. You can either set a date for this to expire. So perhaps you have your contract going through November 1st of this year. On November 1st, the database file will expire. Or if you fire him early, October 15th, you have to ask this person to please import a file to remove his access. So the issue with that is, of course, you've got an unwilling participant who still has access to your ATMs. With SecuRam OTC, the owner has complete control and can deactivate shared access partners at any time. No cooperation is necessary from shared access partners anywhere. And when I say owner, I say that term loosely. It is whoever initialized the lock. So in most cases, that's going to be a management company, a maintenance company who manages the locks for the bank. But it could be the bank themselves. It could be the maintenance provider. Whoever is who initialized the lock, began the initialization of this lock, purchased the lock, can enter that lock into their system. And then they can manage all other shared access vendors at the click of a mouse. So that's one benefit of eliminating this whole shared access issue with the SGA series. Now, if you take a look at the Kaba Moss Cencon, this product, vendor management here is extremely costly and it's a very laborious process. It's a process called vendor meets. And in order to change the service provider here, all registered parties must meet on site at each ATM throughout the country to shelve themselves or remove themselves from the lock. Then all newly registered parties must go to every single ATM at every single location in the country to enroll themselves. The cost estimate for this process is $800 to $1,000 per lock every time you do a vendor meet. Imagine the cost that's being billed back to the bank in order to manage this process. It's very lucrative for all parties involved except the bank. With SecuRam OTC, there's no vendor meet required. We don't even use the term. Assigning access rights is handled remotely in the software. There is zero cost. If you're still charging a fee for it, there's potentially 100% profit because there's zero cost. But this is a cost that is eliminated completely within the system. Elimination of the first vendor meet results in immediate payback of the lock, plus additional costs. So our system actually provides a payback from day one, and I'll explain that here in a second. Eliminate field registration. With the Cencon lock in particular, and actually with the A-Series lock, the setup of the lock is laborious and costly. Again, each shared access partner must register themselves in the lock in the field before they can even begin using the lock. This again, there's a cost estimate here of every time a shared access partner goes out, it's about $150 to $200 that gets billed back to the bank in order to even begin using the lock. So let's assume you've purchased the lock for X number of dollars. You've got $150 to $200 per person who's going to gain access to it. So let's say it's 3 people. Let's call that $600 before you can even begin using the lock, and you pay for that. Our lock has an instant payback from day one, or close to instant payback, because we don't do field initializations. It doesn't require that. We assign access rights in the software remotely. There's zero cost to do it. You eliminate all of these setup costs, and you can result in an instant payback. Close seals. So again, we talked about close seals previously as being very important to the system because it's verification that your asset is secure after the safe had been opened. Let's take a look at the two systems that are in the marketplace and take a look at how they handle close seals. Close seals with the S&GA series. There really isn't a close seal with the S&GA series. They don't have an LCD screen on their keypad, so they really can't communicate any information. How S&G works this system is they use a Dallas key. And the Dallas key gets put onto this reader. When you enter your code, your one-time use code, this key becomes disabled. So the key that you put on there becomes disabled. When I close the door, I have to put the key back on this reader in order to enable it. That is their kind of low-tech way to provide a closed seal. They disable the key so you can't use it again, and then they enable it. Let's assume that the key gets disabled, and they forgot, as they always do, to put this key back on the reader when they close the safe. When they forgot to do that, what happens is they then drive 20 miles to the next ATM, and they put the key on, and the code that they have doesn't work. So then they have to call back into the dispatch center and say, hey, I'm at this ATM, but the code doesn't work. The dispatch center then has to say, well, did you close the last safe? And the technician's going to say, of course I closed the last safe, but you have no way of knowing. The key has been disabled and it's not been re-enabled. So there is no way to know whether that safe back 20 miles is actually closed or not. So what happens here is the dispatch center makes a judgment call and determines, well, maybe I believe him. Maybe he did not take the $50,000 out of the ATM, and perhaps he did close the safe and he just forgot to put the key on. Anyway you look at it, it's a bad security scenario. So what happens here is the dispatcher can then create a code at that ATM that's 20 miles down the road, so the new ATM, and give that technician a new code which re-enables that key at the ATM that they're currently at. So they don't have to drive back 20 miles, but by the same token, you have no idea whether the ATM is closed. Well, our system, of course, doesn't do that. Closed seals are automatically transmitted. Codes are independent of closed seals. We don't require one code to get the next. Let's take a look at the Kaba system. Again, a more sophisticated system, and that's probably why it has a good footprint in the North American market, but it does have an LCD screen, so you can communicate information. When they close the door, the closed seal is displayed on this LCD screen at the lock. The closed seal must then be reported back to the dispatch center. They do that in any number of ways, or perhaps not at all. Generally what happens is they write that code down, and then at the end of the day, they arrive back at the dispatch center, and they hope they've got recorded the correct closed seal for the correct lock. And if they don't, the operator ends up guessing which closed seal it is. Again, not a very secure way to do it, but again, it's 20-year-old technology, so things have come a long way. Closed seals for the Kaba system must be received before another code can be issued. These are dependent codes, so you can't issue anyone else a code for this lock until such time as you got his old closed seal back. It really hampers your operational flexibility. Of course, with our system, closed seals are automatically transmitted, and codes are independent of closed seals. There is no dependency on the closed seal in order to create another code for the next user. Real-time audit trail and lock status. With the currently used ATM locks in the field, the Cencon and the A-Series, lock audit trails must be extracted from the lock on site manually. There is no way to do this automatically. You have to send the user to the field with a key to each ATM you want to extract the audit trail from. The key is then put on the reader, whether it's the A-Series, you put it on this blue dot reader. If it's the Cencon, you put it here. You enter a code, and it instructs the lock to download all of the audit trails to the key. You then send the key back to head office, and they can read the key using their software. Outdated, very costly, and you spend a lot of money couriering keys back and forth to get this information. Of course, with our system, the audit and the lock status is transferred to the dispatch center immediately. We also transfer battery power, believe it or not. So every time you get an audit back from the field from one of our locks through the 3G communication, it also brings back the battery life. So you can have complete management of your system from a remote location. The audits and status are updated at all times, and alerts are issued upon security violations, as we talked about, and the audit resides at both places. So if something should happen that you question your data on your computer, you can always go to the lock and get the audit as well. Or rather than having to go out to the lock, you can download the audit trail again using the communication methods. Elimination of keys. I've talked a little bit about Dallas keys, but these are these devices. It's really just a wafer memory system on a plastic fob. It has a number on it, and that's really all it does. It says, I am a number. Again, old technology, but it gives you the opportunity to provide dual authentication. The Cencon system uses a key and a code. The A-Series system uses a PIN code and a key. But there's lots of issues around keys. Key management is a concern I hear all the time from cash carriers and service companies. Replacement of lost keys. They're always spending a lot of money on keys because these things become burned, which means they become deactivated and they can't be read. There's also the issue of missing keys with live codes. This is specific to the Cencon system. Well, it could be the A-Series as well, but essentially you could issue a code with a key. The cash carrier or the technician says, hey, I lost that key. I have no idea where it is. And that code is valid until such time as someone goes in manually and kills that code in the software, which often doesn't happen. So with the SecuRam OTC, we don't use keys. The SecuRam OTC uses electronic authentication, not with a number on a wafer memory biscuit. We use commonly available devices, smartphones. We can also add our app to PDAs or scanners. And we use 3G, 4G, sometimes SMS in order to communicate information depending on the infrastructure available. I talked about multiple lock systems at the beginning of the presentation, but one of the requirements from the banks was to allow us to provide high security around two areas of the ATM. The first is the ATM safe, which is in the lower portion of this ATM. The second, and this is where the cash is kept, but the second is where all the information is kept, and that is in the PC that runs the ATM. Inside each ATM, there's a small PC. The PC drives the screen and drives this number pad, and it stores and communicates all of the information about your customer's data. Their PIN codes, their magnetic stripes, their authentication, all of that information is stored inside their bank account numbers. It's all stored inside this PC. So what criminals have been doing for years has been putting a skimming device where you slide your card in. And the banking industry and security professionals caught on to that, and now what they do is they have eliminated these skimming device potential opportunities. So the thieves continue to innovate. What they do is they pick the lock, because it's just a cam lock that holds it in place, and now they put a USB stick in the PC. The USB stick is there to sniff or take all of that personal data, identity of your customers, so that they can then come back, take that USB device out, go back and make a bunch of cards, and that's how you have identity theft. So in our system, because it's not a spindle-based system, you don't have a spindle here that goes through this hole, we can control more than one lock. With our system, you can have an ATM lock down here, controlling the money, and another lock at the top, controlling the top hat, or this computer area, simply by adding another inexpensive lock body to this system. Very cost-effective way to do it. Has the same OTC high security that you provide to your cash. You can now provide to your information at the top hat of your ATM. We can actually control up to 4 locks depending on your application. All right, let's take a look at the software. This will just be a brief view, but it'll give you an indication. So the software is able to be, it's a web page. You see here there's a web page address for this particular server application. It's called High Security Electronic Lock Management System, and it's a web-based platform. We can add locks, we can assign locks to ATMs, we can manage personnel, add people, subtract people, we can establish shared access permission rights, we can schedule openings, we can automate the OTC generation and communication, we can receive and verify close seals, and this contains all the real-time audits and lock status. Let me show you what So here's what it looks like. In this particular piece, we can schedule an opening at this particular date with this particular bank, starting from this time, ending at this time. This code will be good from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. You can select who is going to go there, the personnel. You can add 1 person or 2 people. You can create a number of different scenarios around this. And then down here, you add which ATMs they have access to. And how you do that is you click on Add Row, and you can add as many ATMs as you want. And all of this schedule will apply to all of these ATMs. So this is route mode in our system. Once you've scheduled the events, you then approve this by another management personnel, or you can either do a dual or single control. But essentially, a person approves the schedule, and then it automatically gets sent via 3G or SMS directly to the smartphone of the user who's going to be scheduled to go to do that opening. Here is the location that I would add various routes, profiles, and ATMs or locks. So I could put all my ATMs in here. I can, here's a list of ATMs here. I could add new ones. I can modify existing. I can query the lock status. So if I go to Lock Status Monitor, and it would open up the ATM, and it would give me every audit record of the particular ATM that I'm looking at, including battery life. So everything is there. Here's an example of that. So I have queried the lock status of a group of locks. And here's the lock numbers, so serial numbers. 51, 152, 51, 152, and so on, all the way down here. Here's the ATMs that they're on. So you can say this is ATM number 1, it's Hyosung, it's Diebold, it's Wincorn Nixdorf, it's whatever type, or ATM at back of store. Here's the person who unlocked it. These can be names. Here's the second person who was involved in that opening, if there was a second person. Here's the time they unlocked it. And here's the time they locked it. We could provide bank information here as far as what bank it was at. And here's the plan date. This is when I scheduled this event. And then here is the current status of all of these locks. They all say closed. If one of the locks was currently open, this would say open. If one of them was left where the door was open, this would say open over time, and it would have a pop-up and an email that would be sent to someone who would be notified that one of your ATM safes is not only open, but has been open for a long period of time. All right. So we've looked at the software, we've looked at the process, a very, quite an amazing system. That's why it's the fastest growing ATM lock in the world currently. But let's take a look at frequently asked questions. What happens if I establish a schedule, but I have to add another code on the fly? No problem. You simply establish this additional task and click send. The smartphone will receive the task immediately, and it'll be ready to execute when the tech arrives at the ATM. So you can do this anytime you want. What about shared access? We talked a fair bit about this, but access can be shared with an unlimited number of shared access partners. Simply give them an account, set their access rights, and set which ATM locks they can access. The system owner and the shared access partner can establish hierarchy or regions or subregions within each account. You can manage who has access within each shared access account. What if I want to cancel a shared access partner? Do I have to shelve the lock? Absolutely not. You don't have to shelve the lock or go to the lock to revoke access. In fact, SecuRam locks don't understand the term shelving. There's a huge cost savings here, and right now banks are being charged for this service, and it's completely not necessary if you integrate current day technology. The system owner can simply revoke access to one or a set of ATM locks to any shared access partner at any time simply by changing their access rights within the software. All right. What happens if the ATM is in an area where cellular service is unavailable? We covered that as far as redundancy, but it's not a problem. The system generates a pre-issued code at the time of scheduling. The code is sent to the authentication device, the smartphone, the PDA, the scanner, whatever you're using, upon scheduling, and it sits in the background, not visible to the end user. A real-time code is sent to the device when it's requested in real time. But if the real-time code request is unable to be sent within 30 to 40 seconds, this pre-issued code that was already on the phone takes precedence and is displayed on the authentication device and is sent directly to the lock. All of this takes place without your tech having to do anything special. It just works. What if cellular service is down when the close seal is displayed? No problem. The close seal is recorded by the receiving device and sent to dispatch as soon as cell service comes available automatically. So let's say you're in an area, you've opened a safe, perhaps the service was down even when you were trying to open the safe. The pre-issued code would take precedence, come to the forefront, open the safe. The close seal would be displayed as soon as you close the lock. It would be transferred immediately to the phone, and then the phone's looking for cell service to send it back to dispatch. Can't find cell service, the tower's down. So what happens is they get back in their truck, they drive on to the next ATM. The first cell service signal that it picks up, it sends that information back to the dispatch immediately. Alternatively, the tech can always do the alternative, which is to call dispatch and report the close seal. So whichever you prefer. All right, what if someone loses their smartphone? No problem. All active codes can be canceled in the software at any time. So as soon as the person phones in and says, hey, I don't have my smartphone, you can cancel it. The PIN code information that is sent to the phone is masked. So even if someone found the smartphone, knew that it was one of your employees' smartphones, and thought he could gain access to the ATMs using this app, all the PIN codes that are on that device are masked. The employee has to do something with those codes. You know, it might be change 7s for 1s, as we showed you in the example earlier. You can set it for whatever you want to do. It could be subtract 100 from the number. Whatever you would like that to be, it's your way to personalize the actual PIN code so that it's not known to anybody but you. Are these locks currently deployed? Yeah, we have over 150,000 SecuRam OTC locks deployed currently. And this has really been over the last 2 years. We developed the system and introduced it 2 years ago, and it is fast becoming the most dominant OTC lock for new ATMs in the marketplace right now. Now, I say new ATMs, but the lock is available to be, it's exactly the same footprint as a Cencon or exactly the same footprint as an A-Series, so it can easily be changed in the field, retrofitted to existing ATMs. We do that all the time. SecuRam OTCs are already being installed on most popular ATM brands, whether it is Wincore Nixdorf or an NCR or Diebold or Nautilus Hyosung or whoever it happens to be. Those we're installing on those now. They all take a standard footprint, so they can all use this very high-tech lock. Is it cost effective? Yes, you get a payback from day one. So again, we talked about this earlier, but the system provides a return on investment from day one. No longer do you have to spend time and money enrolling access partners in the lock at the ATM or initializing the lock for first setup in the field. All of this can be done from the software. So you don't have to send anyone to the field, and the savings you have in sending all those people to the field pays back for your lock day one. Okay, no more vendor meets. Huge cost. You never have to pay for another vendor meet again. All of that money that you were paying for vendor meets is now bottom line. It continues to provide a payback to your system day after day after day. All right. So what does this system really do? To sum things up, it is the next generation ATM security. It provides real-time ATM management. It provides a flexible one-time code platform. It provides a centrally managed system. And I want to expound on those 2 points. Flexible OTC platform. Instead of us coming to you and saying, our process is this, you must change your operational process to fit my process, we don't do that. Our system works in a very flexible way. If you have a current process that you're using, we can work with you with this system. You can set up the flexibility such that it melds in with your current operational process. It's a connected system, but it doesn't reside on the financial institution's network, which is very key. It's remotely controlled. It offers digital and biometric authentication options. It offers real-time one-time codes or pre-issued one-time codes, however you want to handle it in your system. It provides closed seal verification. It has an auto-close feature with an external close indicator, which is very important in certain markets. Certain markets require that as you close that safe door, the safe lock tells you I'm closed. Other companies use a small red light that turns on and flashes on when it gets closed. Ours actually shows on the LCD screen in plain words, ATM secure. We provide alerts for unsecure safes. Owner-controlled shared access. We talked about this a lot, but you have the ability to grant or revoke access immediately remotely. No more huge amounts of costs to shelve locks. You have real-time audit trail. You always know the status of every single lock around the world. You have full audit trail, including bolt position, open, close. Our locks have an internal sensor that determines that it's open and then it's closed. It doesn't give you a close seal until such time as the bolt is actually closed. Again, you can tie in your safe bolt work and your safe door to validate the close of all 3 of those things before you actually get a close seal. The LCD display makes it very easy to use. There's really no learning curve with this system. Your technicians have the app. The app tells them things to do, gives them instructions, and then the LCD on the screen tells them instructions as well when to do certain things. Press the back button to open instead of having to guess what beeps and braps mean. We have alarm integration. This can be set up with our duress module so that you can receive alerts across your alarm panel. The system can be 9-volt powered. It runs about 4,000 opens and closes on a 9-volt, single 9-volt battery. Or you can have it AC powered. You have AC at the ATM, so you could certainly plug this in, and it would be AC powered. The 9-volt battery would remain in the entry pad for those situations where the AC power is down, so the battery would take over, battery backup. It easily retrofits on existing ATMs. Same footprint as the Kabama Cencon. Same footprint as the S&GA series. It retrofits very easily. It reduces manpower in your call centers. No more do you have to have people relegated to managing all of this. Some additional benefits. This system works on Bluetooth smartphones or scanners or PDAs. So we provide you an app. The app is no charge. We put it on your phone, and we use the technology and the network that's available on your smartphone or other devices in order to help manage the system. We eliminate the IVR bottleneck. In many companies where they use voice recognition in order to help manage codes, this is a huge cost, and we completely eliminate the IVR cost. We reduce call center costs because you don't need a lot of people to manage the system. It's an automated system. It does it in an unmanned environment. All you do is set the schedule, and everything else takes over from there. On-demand OTCs. For that special requirement where you need to have on-demand access for special employees, we can do that, but we do it all with one-time code technology. We can control 2 locks on the ATM. Actually, we can control up to 4. But the requirement then to lock down the sensitive information that's being collected by the ATM every time your customers put their cards in to extract cash. All of that can be locked down with the same high security you use to lock down the ATM cash. And we improve service offerings to banks. Because we are real time, you can provide banking information or customer information related to your ATM SafeLock portfolio in real time. You don't have to send anyone out to the field to get information. As a result of all of the operational cost savings, the payback from day one because you don't have to do field initializations, you increase your profit both on the banking side, on the service side, on the maintenance side, on the cash replenishment side. SecuRam OTC is the next generation in ATM security. If we can be of service, please don't hesitate to call.